Welcome, everybody. I know we're all quite apprehensive after the video. We thought we'd improvise and change our program around. Gavin, you were the most excited about the video.
Absolutely, yeah. Can't wait to see what snippet we can take from today so we don't want to. Is it excellent?
Brilliant. So we've had a great morning so far, and I think one of the big messages that has come through loud and clear is about the sense of urgency. And again, from my perspective, the role I do in Marks & Spencer, I have really felt this change in the last few months. And really it's a phrase of be careful what you wish for, because I've probably spent 15 years battling and talking about the urgency on climate change, or the fact that we haven't moved the agenda on inclusion, or the fact that it is still an unfair workforce. And suddenly everyone's got it. And personally, I am bombarded from when I wake up in the morning and I have to get to the station and step over 3 homeless people sleeping on the street, to when I get to work and my colleagues are phoning me annoyed about why Marks & Spencer hasn't done X, Y, or Z, to when I walk into the shop and I see our customers and they're having a go at me about all the things we still have to change. And there's this real sense of, come on, guys, let's move. But also, the other thing I notice is that as awareness has risen, so we've had 10 or 12 years of awareness raising, and Carolan, I think you picked it up really well, there's a real sense of fear now. When people realize what is really happening and the scale of the problem, whatever the problem is, that sense of fear kicks in. And it can be quite daunting when everyone looks at you. And you're in charge. And you only have a short period of time to fix this. And you need to know the answers. And you need to find a way to be positive in the spirit of complete negativity. When you look at the numbers and all the numbers tell you it's game over, how do you turn that around? And actually, I think that's a really important message, and I'm really grateful that we'll have a good discussion among fellow CEOs who can talk quite honestly and frankly about that. But my personal view is that fear will not get us through this. And actually, if you just think about the strength of the business community, this is what you do. This is what you've always done, and this is why you're in the roles that you're at. You take a bunch of uncertainty, lots of competing agendas, and you find a way to focus, galvanize, and move through it and turn it into an opportunity. So that's all you're going to hear from me. I'm simply going to ask the questions now. We'd like to start off with, given the sense of urgency and uncertainty, Gavin, how do you see it as a CEO in your role?
Yeah, thanks, Carmel. I would say there's probably 2 aspects to this that why we've seen such a change. I think firstly, as CEOs, there's definitely a commercial imperative to really start taking the agenda seriously and the urgency that's around it. And I think that splits into a couple of areas. I think first, Tomas touched on it earlier with Martin around investors. We're certainly seeing an increasing attention being paid by investors into the wide range of sustainability. But also, as companies, I think we shouldn't be ashamed to say that sustainability and efficiency also go together. So there is a commercial imperative from the perspective of running our businesses, and to be more efficient in running our businesses, sustainability and efficiency, I think, go hand in glove. And I suppose that links to my last point on the commercial imperative, which is our customers. And we're certainly seeing at a Bank of Ireland where there's definitely been a sea change over the last year. Our research is telling us that 64% of the population and customers are now more interested than they were maybe a year ago. And that's a huge seismic change. And customers are becoming more demanding of us. So I think if you combine those 3, we're certainly seeing a significant increase in urgency from a commercial comparative. But while that's okay, when I think of all the people that are in the room, and I was just reminded of a word that Thomas used earlier, which is the word privilege. Like, we're privileged to lead the organisations that we do. I certainly feel honoured and humbled to lead the group of people that I lead who work in all communities across Ireland. And that privilege, I've certainly started to get a sense from peers right around the community that people really care about this and want to make a difference and do something different. So I think the combination of a commercial imperative and genuinely as CEOs really caring and want to make a difference and to stand in, if we get that right, that combined momentum really will start to shift in terms of urgency and the pace. It's kind of like, I don't know what the positive of a perfect storm is, but to me that's coming together. And I think I'm really excited about it as we look forward.
So you find it energizing rather than sort of paralyzing?
I think that personal thing is really coming through. I think the video was a little bit of, you kind of had to tick a box and etc. I think those days are gone. I think there's a real genuine desire from the people in this room and wider afield to make a difference and do something differently. I think the commercial imperative is important, and I think it's important to say we shouldn't be ashamed to talk about the commercial realities of running our businesses and how the sustainability agenda can help us. What's important is we get it done. The motives can be different and will be different company to company, but there is a real excitement there.
Okay, so a view from the finance sector. Niall, how does that play out in your sector? Do you think businesses taking enough action?
I suppose if we consider it from a Dawn Meats perspective, I mean, we look at this through the lens of continuous improvement, and so there's definitely not enough being done, and we can always strive to do better. And we look at this through the lens of sustainability. For us, similar to previous speaker's point, is about resource use efficiency. And we definitely look at our business plans and investments based on return on capital, but also in consistency with our business purpose, as Thomas referred to earlier, the business purpose. And our business purpose is to provide quality meat products from sustainable sources to support our rural communities, human health, and nature's ecosystem. And so with resource use, we have to prioritise what we're going to focus on. And so we tend to pilot and test on one site before we roll out across our estate. And so that in effect can, that can compromise a little bit on implementation, but it has a better business impact in the long term.
Well, and I think you make a fair point that sometimes speed isn't about doing lots of activity very fast, and that gives you an illusion that you're making progress, but actually getting it right so you can scale it quickly is also really important. Carolan, everyone's talking very positively at the moment, and I think the economy is currently okay. Have you any views on how recession-proof you think this agenda, this urgency, interest is?
So I think if we're being honest, nothing is recession-proof. So I think, because in tough times, everything's on the table, and there's tough choices to make. If I think back to ourselves in 2011, Eircom at the time went through the largest examinership still, I think, in Irish corporate history. And our relationship with Special Olympics at the time was on the table. Now, thankfully, we saved that relationship, but we've now moved on to 34 years. But the point is, when you're under pressure and you've got people to employ and you've got wages to pay and you've got customers to look after, everything's on the table. So nothing's recession-proof. But what I would say is there's definitely momentum, and it is real. It's not like the video. I thought the video was hilarious. I loved there's women everywhere. I was at the Air Pensioners Golf Day dinner recently, and this really nice gentleman who's retired about 15 years leaned over and thought he was giving me the best compliment ever and said, "You guys are getting everywhere." So it kind of reminded me of him, but he was actually being nice to me.
Yeah.
Trying to be nice. So there is absolute momentum, and I think it is real, but I think the way to sustain it is to make it part of your core business. If it's an aside, something we do when we have time, a load of initiatives or whatever, I think when tough times come, as they always come because we live and work in cycles, I think then it's vulnerable. So if I just give an example for us, we're upgrading our network, we're upgrading our core network, which is going to, someone else made the point about efficiency, which is going to help us be more efficient and, make our products more robust. But the reality is the new equipment will mean 30% less visits to fix things. So that's 30% less vans on the road. The equipment is smaller, which means less power, less space. So that's a really good initiative for us as a company, upgrading our technology, and has a lot of, really strong environmental effects. And I think that's the way to do it, make it core, because then the business cases are easier, and it's kind of fundamental. And every business decision you're making, you're looking through the efficiency lens, the sustainability lens, the environment lens, whatever. So to me, that's how to kind of keep this going. But I think we'd be naive to think that anything is recession-proof, because everything's on the table in tough times, I think.
So I think some recurring themes there of when there's a nice overlap and when there is the business case there, it's energized further by the determination and the leadership to power it through. But if that becomes weaker, then we need to really think about what really matters and focus on that. And I think there's some worthy reflections on, if you think about the scale of the crisis, the financial crisis, and how business acted at that time, How are we acting now when we talk about the transition to low-carbon economy, social inclusion, and worker of the future? Are you really acting in the way that you did in 2008 with the degree of urgency, focus, and single-mindedness? And what can we learn from, as business people, from how we've reacted to other crises, maybe? So the three of you have all been actively involved in business and the community's leaders groups. Thank you very much, and therefore your perspective on the world of business in general has been really, really helpful. Maybe let's take a bit closer to home and talk about your own businesses a bit more. So Niall, I've been looking forward to this question all week. Meat, it's a tricky business to be in with the low carbon economy coming. How do you see that? Is it a trend? Are people going to flexitarian, vegan? Is it going to disappear again and we'll be back to meat and two veg? Or how do you see it?
Well, it's always been a tricky business to begin with anyway. But on the specific question about flexitarianism and veganism, there's no doubt in the developing world that there are alternative diets and lifestyles, and those type of trends happen, from time to time. But we would be consistent in encouraging customers, especially the importance of protein in people's diet for human health and for brain development. So it's important that people have a balanced diet. I mean, meat plays a very important role in human health. It has essential nutrients, vitamins and minerals, as most people know. So the same as we wouldn't encourage people to have sole consumption of meat, nor would we recommend its exclusion.
Obviously.
But obviously, I mean, you can't generalize, because for some people they're actually not eating enough meat, and some people could eat less meat. So it's not a simple binary choice.
But as a CEO, when you're facing into that and reading the media, how do you feel about it? Do you feel energized and think, no, I've got a case to make here, my industry's good, I can propel it forward, I've got a vision? Or do you think, oh my God, this is terrible, and you clearly don't, because you're here and you're on the stage. So, but the option was to hide away and not engage. And so tell us about your vision for...
I think what we as a business and other businesses in the similar area for dairy, for example, I mean, it's important for us to get out the true message and for people to make informed choices about their diet, because it's very important for human health that people have a balanced diet.
Okay.
Now, I know there's concern about greenhouse gases and people eating less meat in the developed world, but there's also more affluence in the developing world. And we feel it's very important that meat is produced where it's most carbon efficient to do so. And it's well recognised by the EU Commission in various studies and by the UN FAO that the Irish agricultural production system, with our temperate climate and grass-growing regions, is one of the most efficient regions in the world in which to produce meat.
And that's propelled you, because you've got a great vision. You've got quite a bold vision to be the most sustainable meat company in Europe. Am I right? Or am I putting words in your mouth?
No, you're not. No, that is one of our stated goals. We've set ourselves very challenging targets for 2025 to reduce our energy and water intensity by 40%. And to reduce our carbon emissions intensity by 50%. So we have very challenging targets set, and this year we have signed up to the Science Based Targets Initiative for both Scope 1, 2 and 3, and we're the first meat company in Europe to publicly do so.
How do you feel about that?
We feel excited.
No, you.
How do I feel about it? I feel that it's very important that we take a leadership role, because we are quite a large business in Europe, and that we show other companies that this is the future, and you have to get on board. Great.
And energized by it.
Absolutely.
A little bit scared, but energized. I'll leave. Carolan, coming on to air, and we heard earlier that moving the dial on inclusion is really not happening. We're not going fast enough. How do you see that within your company, and what are you doing to change that?
Yeah, I suppose, and that's one of the areas with business in the community that we've, as a team, my team have been really involved in. I think we had an opportunity over the last 18 months in particular, because we made a decision to insource our customer care and to move it out of Dublin, where we found it hard to hire and retain people into regional hubs. So as a result, we were hiring 1,000 people. We don't often hire 1,000 people, so you can kind of look at who you're hiring, look at that mix maybe differently than you do when you're hiring 5 or 6 people, So I think we wanted to, be more inclusive, and so we were in Cork and Sligo, and we started working with Turrisnua to bring some of the long-term unemployed kind of back into the workplace through these new contact centres that we were establishing, and that's worked really well for us. We also wanted, I'm taking gender as a given, in terms of we wanted a balance in terms of men and women, but we were also looking to facilitate maybe parents who wanted to work while kids were at school as they moved to secondary school with longer hours. So trying to set up our shifts around that so we could attract that kind of demographic. And this is not philanthropy. We thought that would work for us as well. They'd want to stay with us. We'd retain them, because we had that huge problem in Dublin where it take us 5 months to train you, and in 7 months you left. So we were constantly on that cycle. And again, we did around the evening with people who just maybe want to work in the evening. So another option than maybe them working in a pub or a restaurant or whatever. So, and as a result, we have quite a mixed group of employees now across our contact centres in terms of gender, age, where they've come from, and I think that's really beneficial for everybody. And particularly some of our older employees, because we have quite an older segment of because of where we came from, Telecom Éireann, we have an older segment of customers. So in some ways, our contact centre now probably better represents the customers we serve. So that's been really interesting. And then in Limerick, where we have a lot of technical staff, we've started now to work with Intro about people that are coming back and want to retrain, because we think there's an opportunity. Again, it's very hard to get technical staff in Ireland at the moment. There is a war on talent or whatever, but an opportunity to work with them and train some people up in technical careers or whatever. So, we found that really beneficial from a company point of view in terms of return and business case, and this is always important. And, and it's also obviously working for the individuals involved. I just at a very high level, for a long time, Air's senior management team had a 90-10 male-female kind of lineup. We're now 60-40 female-male. And again, huge change over the last kind of 18 months. Again, reflecting our customer base and, I think acknowledging, the strong female pipeline that we had in the company and giving them now the opportunity to sit around that top table and kind of lead the company. So, it's been, I hope, helpful from a sustainability and environment and employment, but it's also been really good for Air, I think.
And I think what's really interesting in that is that was quite a strategic opportunity where you're able to go big in one move. So 1,000 people linked to part of your business transformation and almost getting an infusion of that diverse workforce in one go. How much more impactful is that rather than chipping away, say, 5% year on year and year? From an impact point of view, do you think the fact that it was a big bang?
It certainly helped. I think.
Right.
I think if we were doing this 5 years ago, I don't know whether we would have had that inclusion lens. I don't know whether right. I think we would have been just hiring, and we would have got some good people, absolutely. But I don't know whether we would have been linking in with the local organisations or thinking about it. So I think we had that lens and we were thinking about that. So that was great. But I think the volume can really drive change. Change trickly is hard. You get momentum. It's like the small stone turning into the big boulder, but we got the big boulder, which was very helpful. But you don't get those opportunities. I don't plan to do that again, in a while. It was also quite stressful and difficult to make it happen. So you don't get those opportunities that often, but I think when you do get them, let's try and make the most of them.
I think that's a key takeaway because, as we say, life is short. You don't get lots of opportunities to transform your business society at the same time. So it's probably worth just reflecting on over the next 2-3 years, what are the opportunity moments in every company?
And that's our challenge now in terms of, are we ambitious enough in terms of sustainability going forward? What's going to be our next big opportunity? And I don't have the answer yet. We're kind of working around our steering group at the moment because we'd like to have an opportunity to do something a bit transformational, but we certainly don't know what it is. And Carolan definitely gave me food for thought there. But, again, what's going to be our next big kind of move and what's going to be that next big opportunity?
Brilliant. Gavin, speaking of big opportunities and once in a lifetime transformations in business, you're facing into the digital revolution like all of us, but that has some significant implications from an employee point of view, potentially positive and negative. how are you dealing with that in terms of you've got branches at the moment, you've got lots of employees, and yet you must be embracing digital technology to transform how your business operates?
Yeah, I think there's no industry in the room that's immune to digitization and the impact it's had. But certainly in banking, we've seen like a revolution over the last 10 years in particular, and it will continue. So you know, customer, and it's driven by customers. Like all of us say that our biggest branch is on our mobile phone, and that's proven by the number of interactions we have with our customers on a daily basis across digital channels, etc. And that's brought all of the, you know, the challenges and opportunities that come with that. It brings disruption, it brings you know, new competition into the market, and that's healthy for our industry as we go forward. I guess when it comes to the impact on the workforce, there's no doubt that the workforce will be smaller as we go forward, but it's still going to be there, and we're still going to be one of the largest employers in the country. And I mean that across the industry in terms of financial services and the role that our teams play, and you know, the investments we're making kind of in retraining and reskilling. And I'll give you one example where we recently set up, and it is relevant to today's agenda, a vulnerable customer unit, which is a specialised unit to help deal with customers who are experiencing vulnerability, whether that's a permanent vulnerability or temporary vulnerability. And really, they're there to support our frontline colleagues. And the team that are you know, are thriving in that role are people that we probably would have seen in the past as people that were going towards redeployment, you know, weren't suited to other roles, but the empathy they have for our customers, their knowledge, their experience, has really seen them, you know, reignite their careers in the bank, and we've reskilled and retrained them in that space. But it's not just about reskilling; it's about, you know, understanding the skills they have today and then pointing them at the, you know, the challenges and opportunities that we have in our business. So I think that's a really important part of it, and a lot of you know, what Carolan said resonates with me in terms of how we need to just be different in how we employ, and I think that can benefit a number of aspects of sustainability, but also, you know, our employees, you know, well-being, etc. Something that we're taking very seriously. Before I leave, I just want to touch on one thing, because you talked about the branches, and I think there is. You know, there is something that we talk about quite a bit at the Leaders Group and Business in the Community. We're there to support community, and I think there is an onus on us, particularly leaders of large companies, in terms of, in Ireland, the local communities and rural communities are very important to us. They're the backbone of the Irish economy. I know it's an old cliche, but it's true. And I think how we support rural communities in particular, as we go through the next 10 to 20 years of this journey, is going to be really important. And so I see certainly our branch presence, that's often seen as a cost. To me, it's not. It's really about us committing to community. What we do in branches today is unrecognisable to what happened 10 years ago. But I certainly see out there, right across the country, notwithstanding the clouds that are there, we run this event called every year National Enterprise and Town Awards. We'll have 100 entries from around the country represented in Kilkenny in a couple of weeks' time. And really, I leave that every year with a renewed sense of energy about what this country is really good about, because you see what our communities put forward for what they want to do, and it's across all ranges of community, from supporting schools and supporting development through to business and enterprise. It's incredible to see what's going on out there on the ground. And I think that's part of what we're trying to do in terms of supporting community, with whether it's branch presence or, more importantly, the people that are in those branches, reskilling, getting them out to deal with communities. So that combination of, while we're seeing a digital economy certainly emerging, I think we've also got to remember what's very strong about Ireland, and I think that local community spirit is something, you know, we like to say we're unique, but I do believe it's unique to Ireland, and we should be very proud of it.
Great, and I think you've touched on a really important point there. There's the practical and tangible things that we all need to do in terms of change happening, but there's the how you navigate that change as a human leader and a thoughtful leader. So yes, there's difficult decisions to be made, but how do you make that in the most considered way and thoughtful way? And also the psychology of change. So the workforce of the future, a lot of the conversations have been about, you can't promise someone a job in the future, and you can't tell them what sort of job it will be. So what's your responsibility and empowering that you can do to help people get comfortable with that?
But I think giving people confidence is a key part of that. So as you reskill people, you know, the institutionalization is a real fear that people have. You know, if they're in the one company for a long time, and we still have quite a few people, certainly in Bank of Ireland, that are in the company for a long time. But I think reskilling, giving people confidence, and seeing people that do leave and indeed come back, but watching how their careers thrive, we should be proud of that, not seeing it as just as a loss. We should also be very proud that people that are Bank of Ireland alumni are going on and are being very successful in their careers elsewhere.
Thank you. The three of you have been very frank, and thank you for that. I'd like to just round up by just asking you a little bit about your personal reflections on what value do you see working with other businesses in the leaders groups or in collaborations like BITC Ireland? How does that help you personally navigate through the changes that are lying ahead? Carolan?
Yeah, I think first of all, just working with business in the community, because I think if I look back at our CSO journey over the last, over the last 10 years, it started off being very much about community and charity and sporting Special Olympics, which is absolutely wonderful, and we wouldn't have it any other way. But I think working with business community expanded that into our environmental impact, our HR policies, so it just, and even going for the mark as well, just really broadened your kind of thinking, which was fantastic. So I think, and then to interact with other, so that's great because you've got all that stuff to look at, but then the practicalities of how do you make this work, or how are you thinking about that? So I think that's when the real benefit of working with the other companies come in. Like one of our big challenges, our buildings are really old, so they're not usually energy efficient, but there's people working in them every day. So massive cost to refurb them, and then what you do, all those kind of things. So I think that practical engagement with the other, CEOs and leaders in this area, you just get a lot of useful kind of tips and support and kind of ideas, and as I said, we're looking for our next big idea. So again, I'd be very happy to copy someone else's, and make it work for her. So that's just really beneficial for me.
Niall, what about yourself?
Yeah, so I mean, we've been focused on sustainability now for a long, long time, but definitely been involved in the BITC, as well as with Board BIA on the Origin Green programme and the European Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. We've found that gives us a great platform to put the structure around our future vision and set our targets into the future. So it's all about collaboration, and it's pre-competitive. And that's what we should all be doing, and I'm sure almost everybody in the room, bar that 2%, are focused on that at the moment.
That person's hiding under a table somewhere. Gavin, yourself?
Yeah, I think you're very proud of getting the reaccreditation today, but I also think the process, and you touched on it when you came up and said of bringing people out to lunch. I mean, in fairness to business community in Ireland, they make you work for it.
Yeah, they do.
And,
they certainly do.
And that's the way it should be, right? We shouldn't take these for granted, and there's a lot of work put into it, and there's a lot of pride in the organisation when that happens. And I think how we collaborate then across, whether it's joint initiatives, but also that little healthy competition where we do see others doing things. Like, we've got to continuously up our game. I think the one thing that comes clear from today, and certainly from my personal reflections, I saw recently where I personally kind of led, we introduced a new fund for putting some meaningful products into the market for people that were investing in sustainability. So business customers getting meaningful discounts for loans that are investing in sustainability. I felt from looking at the community as a whole that you can get up and talk if you want about this, but you actually have to put meaningful commitments behind it. So that's just one example, but I think how we can bounce off each other, work on some joint initiatives together, but also that little bit of healthy competition where we see somebody else doing it in another industry or in our own industry and saying, do you know what, we continuously need to kind of up our game in this space and keep making investments and tangible investments. And I think that's a real benefit of working together on this.
Great. So,
Carmel, if I may, I want to give a shout out to all the teams that achieved the business and responsible mark, because they're the ones that did all the work. We're just sitting up here taking some of the credit. So well done.
Yeah. Good point.
Well said.
Thank you, Gavin. Thank you, Niall. Thank you, Carolan. So I think what we've touched on a little bit today is the sense of urgency and the fact that as business leaders, if you can be very strategic about the changes you're already making in your business and look at it with the lens of sustainability, and use the collaboration, use the new ideas, use the sense of an industry scale change happening together, then hopefully we can move a lot faster in the pace that's required. Thank you for your input.
Thank you.